I think we all collectively,
I was
whether
trying to figure out
you're,
which one you were talking about. I think I know which one you're going
yeah,
with, but yeah.
regardless of where you sit on Ryan Johnson, regardless of where you sit on Rise, I think we can all collectively, as Star Wars fans, agree that Rey was great. And Rise probably didn't give her the crystallization that she deserved. So to have her back, I think is very exciting. I am so excited for this new Rey movie as she's supposedly going to be rebuilding the Jedi Order, whatever that looks like. Uh, I don't know about you. I think we're on the same page here. Most people seem to be very excited for
I
this
am
because
very
Rey
excited.
truly is one of the best things about that sequel trilogy, if not the best thing about it. She's not
100%.
talked about enough, but I'm so glad that we're gonna finally get. She's gonna get her due finally.
She is. And that was something where like it was early in the morning when all that was happening.
Yeah,
I
at eight
actually
o'clock
forgot.
Eastern time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually forgot that it was happening all together. So I'm just sitting here like working, and then like my phone's blowing up, and I was like, Daisy Ridley's back. I've loved her ever since I saw Force Awakens in the theaters 3 times,
Yeah.
and I could
Yeah.
not get enough of that movie, and I still can't because what she brought to Star Wars, along with John Boyega and of course Adam Driver, but like something about Daisy Ridley, I was like, wow, like she feel, and that was like her first movie, like big break, like ever when it came to
Yeah.
Star Wars. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I just immediately fell in love with her character, her mannerisms, just everything about her. And I'm so excited that we're getting more Ray because I mean, the sequel trilogy didn't necessarily have a plan, but like you said, Ray definitely is one of those characters who carried the film or that
Mhm.
franchise on her back, given the script that she was given altogether. But I'm so happy to have her back,
Mhm.
and she took a hiatus from social media for a while, then she came back, and
Mhm.
we saw her grace us with her presence on screen during Star Wars Celebration this year, and I was like,
Mhm.
like, what, welcome back, like this, I want to welcome her back with open arms. And I know there's a lot of, naysayers out there, but we're not going to talk about those people because she definitely brought something special to Star Wars. And I want to see her
Yeah.
continue that journey because she is a very important character.
She
And
is.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited to have her back.
Yeah. I want to provide a little bit of context here as to why I love Ray and why ultimately I was disappointed with how that sequel trilogy ended because it
Mhm.
does help articulate why I'm so elated for Daisy Ridley and for Ray to be back because I am one of the biggest defenders of The Force Awakens. I think it is arguably the second best Star Wars movie ever of all of them. I think it is great. I know
Well,
that's maybe
yeah.
a little hot takey,
Oh,
but
mine's pretty hot takey too, but
but here's
you only
here's
one
why.
everyone.
Let me before people click off of this or they get, angry at me and here come the comments. Let me provide a little bit of context. What I love about The Force Awakens is that it is way more subversive than it gets credit for. People credit Ryan Johnson for being subversive because it's Ryan Johnson. I think they expect that in a lot of ways. And to that film's credit, at least mostly anyway, of course, a lot of people will discredit the film for being subversive. And I'm not wanting to get into a debate on that. But The Force Awakens is a film that I think is incredible in how it taps into mythos and memory, and which is a big part of Rey's arc in that film. And I love how it takes its central villain who wants to be Darth Vader, but he isn't anything. He's anything but Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He's immature. He's a kid. He's childish through a lot of that film. He doesn't, like, aesthetically, he evokes intimidation like Darth Vader, but underneath, he doesn't have the prowess of Darth Vader. Then you have Han Solo. Who's Han Solo in the original trilogy? He's a jokester. He's a rebel. He's, he's Han. He's got the cool factor. He's Han Solo. He's, I love you. I know is his like that's how he's got that sarcastic touch to him. So where's that guy in The Force Awakens? That guy is nowhere to be found. Who is he in The Force Awakens? He's a father desperate to get his son back. That's who he is in that movie. And to me, it is emotionally exhilarating. It is easily one of the most rich emotional layers of anything in Star Wars. That's who Han Solo is in that film. And of course, you have General Leia a part of all of that as well. That film, like, almost intentionally from a plotting standpoint, points back to a lot of the, original trilogy, in particular that first Star Wars film. So from a plotting standpoint, it's like, oh, look at this. Isn't this familiar? But then underneath, J.J. Abrams is very intentionally undermining everything that came before to do something new and invigorating. And that does not get talked about enough because it's J.J. Abrams. What do people want to talk about? Oh, it's lens flares. It's the sun flare thing.
Yeah.
It's, or whatever. I
totally agree.
Yeah, it's the little J.J. Abrams isms of that film that I think distract people from what is actually there in terms of meat on the bone and in terms of this idea of subverting expectations or flipping the coin on the other side. That is what JJ does in that film. And I will defend it to death. I will die on that hill a bloody death.
I'm right there with you.
And I think it does it a little bit more seamless even than Rian Johnson's movie, which I also think is very good. Don't get me wrong. I do love his Star Wars movie and all of the hatred toward him. The vitriol is wholly unnecessary.
Oh, that was a rough time.
In fact, I'm one of the few that love both films with a deep passion. Like, I love Star Wars and I love The Force Awakens for all of its subversive qualities, and I love The Last Jedi for all of its subversive qualities. It might not do it quite as seamless for me, and it's a little bit more disjointed narratively, even if it's not a recreation of the first film, quote unquote, which again I think is a red herring. I don't think that's meant to invoke anything other than to be a facade for JJ to do all the subversive stuff he does in The Force Awakens. The narrative of The Last Jedi, I think on the whole is good. I think it's maybe a little messier at times. But they're both very, very, very good films. I love them. And I say all that to say that Rey's journey from The Force Awakens and even some of the ambiguity there, because here's the other thing. JJ gets a lot of crap for what happens in Rise, but he invokes that same ambiguity in The Force Awakens. He doesn't indicate in any sort of way that Rey is going to be a Skywalker or that she's going to be a Palpatine or whatever she ends up being. Her lineage in that film is uncertain. It is.
I love his mystery, the mystery aspects.
Yes,
it's so much.
He is also toying with that idea that she is a nobody. He does not come out with any sort of clue. The only quote unquote clue we have is that she's in tune with the Force. But that was always going to be a part of this sequel trilogy because it's Star Wars. So you're going to have a Force user.
Exactly. Yeah. There was a point in time where I thought that the Force just willed itself into existence, almost like with Anakin, and just, created Rey. But yeah, no, I do agree. Like there's so much mystery. Like, how did I think my gosh, Lupita Nyong'o's character, the orange alien, I'm blanking on her name. How did she get a hold of Anakin's lightsaber? Like, how does it get from A to B? And it's like there's so much with Force Awakens that I think JJ did such a great job with, and Rian Johnson kind of took the baton with Rey kind of being a nobody, but then, all
Yeah.
that stuff happens.
Uh,
But
Maz
regardless,
Maz
I'm
Maz
very happy.
Kanata is Lupita
Yeah.
Nyong'o's character, by the way.
Okay. That's what it was. But yeah, I'm so happy to have her back. She looks thrilled to be back. And we need to be kinder to these characters playing in Star Wars, especially the guy who played Jar Jar Binks during the prequels, who almost took his
Yeah,
own
it was
life.
fun to see his little cameo in The
Yeah,
Mandalorian as well.
yeah. So it's like I think just be kind when if you don't like it, that's fine. But like there's no reason to be rude or cynical about it. But I'm very
I I
excited.
I
And
I
like,
I agree, and again, I say all of that to say
mm,
I love what JJ does with the Force Awakens, with Rey, and setting up this potential ambiguity that maybe she isn't a nobody. That is very much established in
yeah,
that first film. The only thing that she has to go on, more than her lineage, actually, what I think is so brilliant about the Force Awakens, and again, this just isn't talked about enough, is that it's about this idea of legacy and memory as it relates to lore. Like when she's trapped in that thing where Kylo Ren is going to interrogate her,
yeah,
like she's heard stories about the Jedi, like oh they can use the Force, they can tap into people's minds. Like these are like you hear all of these
these
narratives,
stories.
and
Yeah, the
all
bedtime
of it.
stories.
It's the bedtime stories that are now becoming true to her. So when she's stuck, she's like, I heard this so many times as a child. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's try it.
Let's try it, see what happens. Like to me, that's what's fascinating. Now
Yeah,
we can debate the semantics of should she have been powerful enough to do that in that situation? Like I don't care. I honestly don't care. That's all semantics to me because the point of that scene is to reverberate that idea of the bedtime story of these narratives that have been passed down for generations and for years about the Jedi and what they were capable of. And here is Rey using that to her advantage in that situation. So to me, that should be the talking point. I don't care
it
about
should be,
semantics.
especially in a franchise where there's like essentially like a space Jesus, and
Yeah.
people are just flipping about, and
And,
and
and,
like
and also, I think what's great about that as well, and sorry to cut you off, but earlier we were talking about the obliviousness of Kylo Ren. He has this
mm,
cool aesthetic and this awesome voice, but underneath, he's a child still.
yeah,
And here's a moment where, again, because of that, is what's defining him in that film. Rey's able to escape essentially, and so I just love all that. That's ultimately what leads to him killing his father and him being
yeah,
so conflicted. So like Kylo Ren is such a fascinating character there as well. But anyway, I say all that to say Rey's arc in The Force Awakens is great. Her
yeah.
arc in The Last Jedi is also very
I
good.
love it. Yeah, good.
To me, it's Rise that becomes a problem. And it
Yeah,
should be noted it's a Disney problem. It's a Lucasfilm problem. It's like J.J. Abrams was a director for hire. He was not planning on coming back to that movie, but because of all of the off production issues, if you will, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist or like you don't have to do a ton of research to look back at the production hell of that film to realize that it was way out of JJ's hands. Like these
yeah,
directives were coming from people way above his pay grade that, hey, we have to tie him back to somebody. Let's make him a Palpatine.
yeah. That's always been like the biggest criticism of Star Wars. It's like somebody is always related to somebody else. When it
Yeah.
comes to like
And look,
lineage.
it's not good. It's not great. I don't love it. And it is unfortunate because now what have we seen with even a lot of the Disney Plus shows, like The Mandalorian specifically, has that like the broader arc of that whole series so far is we have to find a way to
Bring
clean
them
up
like
the mess of Rise.
that too, and I
Like it's
mean,
kind of
yeah.
silly.
I mean,
Uh,
I've always said that, like, I mean, for the Mandalorian, when it comes to just the trying to like we keep talking about how we're excited for Star Wars to kind of move away from the Skywalker saga, more or less. Obviously, Ahsoka is very tied into the Skywalker saga, but we haven't really seen Ahsoka's story explored on live action, so that's a little bit different. But like I'll probably get sound off this in the comments, but I always say that like the worst thing that actually happened to the Mandalorians is that they introduced like Luke Skywalker, because that completely undercuts everything. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's Luke. And it's like, that's great, but like I thought we were done with the Skywalker saga. Let's, as it comes to creating or exploring new characters like Din Djarin and more so Bo-Katan as well.
See, and that's interesting. Like and again, I'm one of the defenders of that decision because I think context matters. And given Luke and where he was at that time post Return of the Jedi, it made sense that he would seek out Grogu. Like narratively, dramatically, character motive wise, like
it was a great scene. Don't get me wrong. It was a great scene.
Like it makes sense. It makes the most sense that it was Luke. If it was literally, it's one of those weird situations that if it was anybody else, because, for the points that you're making, we can't recreate Luke at that age unless we use CGI. Maybe we shouldn't do it. Or, we don't want to hire another actor to be Luke Hamill. Or, you know what? Let's just get away from Luke because the Luke story has played out. Let's do something else, and we'll have another character coming to get Grogu. Like, use whatever excuse you want. Right. If it's like just from a broad Star Wars lore perspective, if it's anyone else but Luke, it is incredibly contrived. It is manufactured. It makes no sense. It has to be Luke. Like narratively, dramatically, it has to be Luke. So could they have handled it differently? Should they have hired someone else to just act as young Luke instead of doing the whole CGI nonsense? I mean, maybe we can talk about that. I think there's a debate to be had there, but to have Luke as the one seeking out Force users, because we know that's what he was doing at that time.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Him. It had to be him.
Hey, that is true.
I think they made the right call there. It's just an execution issue has been kind of the problem. And I think that's kind of been the case for anything Star Wars over the last 5 years or so. Even going back to Rise, even Boba Fett, its ideas on paper, aside from the Palpatine thing, I just think that's wholly unforgivable. But
she was originally almost going to be related to Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm like, how is that? Because Obi-Wan,
I've heard that rumor
the only
too.
True Jedi that's never really outside of Yoda that's actually followed the way of the Jedi.
And here, this is another reason why I think The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi should be looked at as siblings and not rivalries.
Yeah,
because the potential ambiguity of Rey being a nobody in The Force Awakens is great, as we talked about. Then there's what seems now iconic scene in The Last Jedi between her and Kylo, where they have that conversation. You are a nobody. Though, like, that together is a perfect marriage. And then, of course, Rise undermines all of that. However, I will say this. I think this new Rey movie has an opportunity to retcon the retcon in the sense that, and maybe not fully retcon it because, look, it's Star Wars lore at this point now. She's a Palpatine. But what we can see from her, if they do talk about her lineage at all, they have an opportunity here for her to be like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not defined by that. I'm Rey something else. Like, maybe she comes up with a last name that, and then she truly becomes her own individual that isn't Palpatine. Like, they have an opportunity for her to write her to talk about that and how she's not going to be defined by any of that at all. And instead she's going to lean into the idea that, she had parents that she doesn't know or understand. And now she's her own thing. Yeah. So, and I hope they do that. I kind of assume that's going to be the plan. At least we can hope that's going to be the plan.
Yeah, maybe some John Boyega action in there, but we'll see. It
Man, I
all
would
just
love for him
depends.
to come back. It's always
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Because that was another criticism, right? Was, you
Should
know,
have been a
the
Jedi.
Finn and Rey relationship in The Force Awakens is
Oh,
awesome. And then the second two
yeah.
movies really get away from that in ways that is unfortunate.